Formal U.S. declaration of war in Libya. Congress has also not signed off on U.S. involvement there. Ohio Congressman Dennis Kucinich says he plans to introduce a bill to end the operation in Libya based on the War Powers Resolution. He joined us to explain. Congressman, thanks for being with us. We passed an important milestone yesterday, 60 days since U.S. involvement in Libya began. No authorization from Congress. When you get back here in Washington, what do you plan to do?
Well, you're right. There was no authorization. The President moved to attack Libya without constitutional authority. When I return to Congress, I'll be consulting with other members and introducing a bill that will call for a vote on Libya. We cannot stand by, be a rubber stamp for an administration that chooses to violate the Constitution and, frankly, violate U.S. law, because now he's in violation of the War Powers Act as well.
More than 10 years ago, President Clinton was part of the NATO coalition bombing Kosovo and Serbia without complying with the War Powers Act. I know that you opposed that war as well, but how is this different than what President Clinton did in Kosovo and Serbia?
10 years ago, there was a vote in Congress that denied the President the ability to continue to execute that war. The thing to keep in mind is the U.S. Constitution has primacy here. Congress has the sole authority to determine whether or not we go to war. Absent an imminent threat, the President doesn't have the ability to order our troops into combat. He can't say, well, he did it for NATO. We don't live by what NATO does. The Constitution trumps NATO. He can't say it was the UN Security Council. The Constitution trumps the UN Security Council. This is about our Constitution, and it's time the President of the United States began to follow the same Constitution that in 2007 he was very clear, saying the President didn't have the authority to take our troops into war absent an imminent threat. So he knows better, and we have to call him on that, and Congress has to stand up for the Constitution. It's very plain.
Congressman, the process to get to where he is aside, why do you think involvement in Libya is a bad idea?
Look, first of all, we're intervening in a civil war. The side that we're intervening on behalf of is now, excluding women from the process. They're rounding up people and detaining them, and there's a hint that they're committing some of the same practices that they accused Colonel Gaddafi of. Beyond that, isn't this really about oil? Isn't this about the fact that if you look near Benghazi, that's where most of the oil is? Right after the rebels solidified their control of the Benghazi area, they cut a deal with Qatar, a $100 million oil marketing deal. And they've been in Washington intimating that if we find a way to support them, that they're willing to be good to us on oil deals. Look, we have to take care of America first. We cannot be in a position where we're going into these wars. Our troops are already committed. Problems here at home. We have budget problems. We have deficit problems. And yet we're ready for another war? Are you kidding me? I mean, this President has to be called to an accounting on this. And this is not an academic matter. This is about the Constitution. And if we stand by the Constitution, we'll be safe. But if we don't, we're looking at America going deeper into a war here. When we were told it was going to be a matter of days, not weeks, we're already in it months, and there's no end in sight.
Congressman, on the subject of accountability, you have suggested that the way that the President went into Libya might be an impeachable offense. What do you plan to do about that?
Well, a President violates the Constitution per se. He can be called on that through the process. I've said that the country doesn't need the destabilizing factor of an impeachment process.
So why
right
say
now.
it?
I've been very clear about it. Well, because it needs to be understood how grave this matter is. This is not a small matter. To take the country to war absent congressional authority, in violation of the Constitution, and now in violation of the War Powers Act. We don't need an impeachment, but we need and must require our President to follow the Constitution and establish U.S. law. We have to demand that, and Congress is the co-equal branch of government which the founders established for the purpose of making the determination of whether or not we go to war. And it's time that Congress stood up for the Constitution. And tomorrow in Washington, I'm going to be urging fellow members of Congress to join my resolution, which calls for a vote, and hopefully will lead us out of this mess that we've waded into in Libya.
And we'll be watching. Closely when you do. Congressman Dennis Kucinich for us today from Seattle. Congressman, thanks for joining us. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
He was one of the first GOP contenders